At 11:47 on Christmas Eve, Caleb heard his pregnant wife say the one sentence he never expected to hear from her: "Go spend Christmas with her." He thought she was talking about his lonely mother. He was wrong. By sunrise, the house was silent, her suitcase was gone, and the note she left behind made his entire world collapse. Caleb and his wife, Hannah, had been married for 4 years and were only weeks away from becoming parents. They lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Asheville, North Carolina, where December mornings arrived with frost on the windows and warm lights glowing from every porch. Their little house had always felt like a promise. But lately, something inside it had changed. Hannah had become quieter. She stopped laughing at Caleb's terrible jokes, stopped asking about his day, and often sat alone in the nursery they had spent months preparing. Caleb knew pregnancy could be exhausting, but he also sensed there was something deeper she wasn't telling him. If you've ever believed in kindness, second chances, and the power of love to heal what seems broken, take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this. That Christmas Eve, Caleb came home carrying groceries and a small wrapped gift he had secretly bought for Hannah. He found her sitting beside the Christmas tree, one hand resting on her stomach and the other holding an old photograph. The photograph showed Caleb as a teenager standing beside a young woman he barely recognized anymore. Her name was Rachel, his first love, the woman he had once planned to marry before life pulled them in different directions. Rachel had recently returned to town after years away, and Caleb had exchanged a few innocent messages with her because she had been struggling after losing her father. Hannah had seen those messages. Caleb had explained everything, but apparently, the explanation had not erased the fear in her heart. When Hannah looked up at him that night, her eyes were swollen from crying. She didn't accuse him. She didn't scream. Instead, she quietly told him to go spend Christmas with Rachel. Caleb stared at her, completely stunned. He told her there was nowhere else he wanted to be, that Rachel was part of his past and Hannah was his future. But Hannah only smiled sadly and said that sometimes people needed to say goodbye properly before they could truly move forward. Caleb thought she was asking for space. He never imagined she was preparing to disappear. The next morning, Christmas Day, Caleb woke before sunrise. He reached across the bed and touched an empty pillow. Hannah was gone. At first, he convinced himself she had gone for a walk. Then he noticed the closet door standing open. Her suitcase was missing. Her coat was gone. The nursery was empty except for the crib, the rocking chair, and a small envelope placed carefully on the baby's dresser. His hands shook as he opened it. Hannah had written that she loved him more than she had ever known it was possible to love another person. But she also confessed that during the past few months, she had discovered something terrifying. Her pregnancy had brought back memories of her own childhood, when her father had abandoned her mother shortly before she was born. Hannah had spent her entire life terrified that love could disappear without warning. When she saw Rachel's name on Caleb's phone, that old fear convinced her that history was repeating itself. She wrote that she didn't want their baby to grow up watching two people stay together only because they were afraid to leave. Caleb sank to the nursery floor with the letter in his hands. For the first time, he understood that Hannah hadn't left because she stopped loving him. She had left because she believed she wasn't enough. He drove through the Christmas morning snow looking for her, calling every friend and relative he could think of. Finally, he remembered something Hannah had once told him about her grandmother's old cabin near Boone. He drove there with tears in his eyes and Christmas music playing faintly from the radio. When he arrived, he found Hannah sitting on the cabin porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the mountains. She looked exhausted and frightened. Caleb didn't rush toward her. He simply stood a few feet away and told her that he had spent the entire morning thinking about what she had written. Then he admitted something he had never said aloud: he had been so busy trying to fix everything that he hadn't stopped long enough to understand what she was afraid of. Hannah began to cry. Caleb told her that Rachel was never the woman he wanted. Rachel was a chapter that had ended years ago. Hannah was the person he chose every morning. Their baby was the future he had dreamed about. But more importantly, he told Hannah that he didn't want her to stay because he convinced her to. He wanted her to stay because she finally believed she was safe. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Hannah placed a trembling hand over her stomach and whispered that the baby was moving. Caleb stepped closer, and when he felt the tiny kick beneath his palm, his eyes filled with tears. It was the smallest movement, but to him it felt like an entire life asking them not to give up. They didn't solve everything that day. They didn't pretend one conversation could erase years of fear. But they decided to begin again. They returned home after Christmas and started counseling together. Caleb learned to listen without immediately trying to fix things. Hannah learned that fear could tell a convincing story without telling the truth. 3 months later, their daughter, Grace, was born on a bright spring morning. When Caleb held her for the first time, he remembered that Christmas Eve and the empty bed. He realized that sometimes the greatest danger to a family isn't the absence of love. It's the fear that love will disappear. Years later, Grace would ask why there was a tiny Christmas ornament shaped like a suitcase hanging at the back of their tree. Hannah would smile and tell her that it was a reminder of the Christmas when two frightened people almost lost each other, and chose to come home instead. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe so these stories can reach more people who need a little hope. And before the ending, comment, "Love deserves a second chance," if you believe that people can heal when they choose honesty, patience, and forgiveness. Because Caleb learned something that Christmas morning that he would never forget: sometimes the person walking away isn't asking you to chase them. Sometimes they're silently asking you to prove that home is still a place where they are wanted. And Hannah learned something too. She had spent her whole life believing that people eventually leave. But that Christmas, someone finally stayed.